Hello and good evening to you. I'm Mitch McCoy. It is Monday night and there is a bizarre friend mystery brewing. Tonight, part 2 of Friends Missing. Tonight, Terkessa Wallace. Where is she? Could her friend, who's also missing, help connect the dots? We are live tonight as we uncover brand new court documents related to this case. The new court documents being uncovered by the Monday Night Mystery panel. Welcome into Monday Night Mystery. I'm Mitch McCoy. Glad to have you along with us tonight. Remember to use that hashtag Monday Night Mystery. You see it there on the bottom of your screen, and you can ask the panel questions. And I want to get straight to our panel tonight. Of course, we have Latricia Woodruff up there at the upper left-hand corner. She is a law enforcement and a communications expert. We have Kelly Ward to her bottom. That is a former Pulaski County prosecutor. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have Tommy Hudson, a former homicide investigator. All thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate having you all with us for this special Part 2 series of Friends Missing. There's that urgent search underway for these two women out of North Little Rock, and I want to get straight to Latricia Woodruff, the law enforcement and communications expert, to give us a rundown of this case. Latricia?
Mitch, you see the two pictures there. Two friends, both went missing. Tonight we're talking about Terkessa Wallace, who's 34 years old when she went missing on January 10th, 2014. Now that's been about 7 years ago. She was missing from North Little Rock, as you stated. We're told that she dropped her child off with a friend and had not been seen since. She was driving a Toyota Corolla, a white Toyota Corolla. That car hasn't been seen. She hasn't been seen. And as you alluded to earlier, this is such a mystery because she was best friends with a woman, Shakina Burnett, who we talked about last week, who went missing as well, maybe a day or so before that. Her leg was found in the Arkansas River, but nothing has been found. And Miss Wallace has not been heard from since 2014. Tonight, we're going to dive into that mystery, talk a little bit about the court documents you mentioned, and try to figure out what happened and where we can go with this.
Yeah, and this is such an important case here as we talk about Terkessa Wallace and her friend, part 2. If you missed our last episode, you can go to KARK.com, fox16.com, and you can watch that show in its entirety right now. Latricia, we just heard from you on this case, but Kelly Ward, you're uncovering brand new court documents tonight. Tell us what you're finding as we try and process this case.
So there was a petition filed in September of last year in the probate court asking the court to officially declare Miss Wallace deceased. The filing was done by her family members. It references an Arkansas statute which states that if a person has been absent from the state, has not been seen in over 5 years, and you can provide proof that there have been efforts to locate them that have been unsuccessful, then a court can declare that person dead. And that was filed in September 17th of 2020, and then in December of 2020, an order was issued from Pulaski County Circuit Court officially stating that for legal purposes, Miss Wallace was deceased and that her estate could now proceed.
I want to get to Tommy Hudson, former homicide investigator. Tommy, good to have you back from the beach, my friend. Tell me a little bit about your take on this case. And I mean, this is just so bizarre.
Mitch, it is. You know, it's one of those cases that everybody's aware of, both in Little Rock, North Little Rock, all over the state of Arkansas. It's been in the media quite a bit. And, I know the detectives over in the North Little Rock Police Department, and I know a lot of the detectives in their cold case homicide unit too. And I can tell you from experience from working with those detectives over there, they leave no stone unturned. And I'm sure they're doing everything in their power to try to figure out what happened. The way we work homicides in Little Rock is the same way North Little Rock does. I mean, they are top-notch guys, and I know that they've been following up. I've, based on what I've seen in the media, some of the things that they put out there on trying to locate these two ladies, or what's happened to these two ladies. I think they're really trying the best they can. They just need, somebody to come forward that knows where they were, who they were with at that time, because that's what everything the investigation is going to go from, is who saw her last and who talked to her last, and work everything back from there, or where she was last. Everything starts from there and works its way back. And so it's a big job. It's a hard job. It's a job that they're highly capable of doing, and hopefully they'll eventually get some closure for this family.
Yeah, let's hope for closure. Let's pray for closure. I know that that's what everybody would want, especially knowing that there are two missing people that need to come home, and a family needs answers. Tommy, where does an investigation like this start?
Well, it starts, like I said a while ago. The first thing they're going to do is try to figure out where these women were, who these women were with at the time of their disappearance, who has reputable and credible information about where they were going, what they were driving, who their closest contacts are, and worked everything back from that point. Just common sense investigative procedures. They're going to try to find anything they can out about their digital footprint and what was going on at their lives at that time, if they had any conflicts with anybody in particular that those people needed to be interviewed, which I'm sure North Little Rock has done. But, sometimes you do those interviews and somebody has information and they're just not ready to come forward with it. But sometimes it just takes something like this to happen. People start talking about it again. And somebody says, well, I heard they were going here, or I heard they were talking to this person, or they were having a problem with this person here. That gives those detectives that extra information that they may have, that they can go along with some of their evidence that they were following up, or witnesses they were talking to during the initial investigation. But everything starts right there, who they were with last, where they were going, what contacts they have that are, reputable, proven contacts of what was going on in their life and who they were with at the time of their disappearance.
If you're just joining us, you're watching Monday Night Mystery. We are talking about Terkessa Wallace. She is missing. She's been missing now for 7 years, and I want to let people know how to interact with us during the show. You can use the hashtag Monday Night Mystery right here on Facebook, and it will allow us to bring your question into tonight's show, and we can bring your question up to Latricia, Tommy, or Kelly. Kelly, you are going to pick up where Tommy left off.
I was. Something he said just like tipped in my mind. So in the court filings, in the petition, the family kind of gave a little bit of a timeline for her last day. She had a roommate who last saw her on January the 10th of 2014. On that day as well, she dropped her 5-year-old son off with her cousin to babysit just for the day. She was supposed to come back and pick up her 5-year-old, and she never returned. So I think the roommate was actually the last person to see her, and then her cousin just prior to that on the same day, who had custody of her 5-year-old son, and they hadn't heard from her since. So you can imagine family members, the kind of panic and the feeling that they're going through. Not only is she missing, but now that she's, there's this 5-year-old who doesn't know where his mom is. And so it's just a tragedy. And it's just something that someone knows something about. Someone out there has information. And if they could contact North Little Rock Police Department, they could probably get this case solved.
Well, and as Latricia says, you can always solve a case with people. I want to get to Tommy. Tommy, a former homicide investigator. I guess let's break this down. Terkessa drops her 5-year-old son off, and this is according to court documents, right? Drops her 5-year-old son off as she normally would, I'm assuming, and she is dropping him off. I'll pick him up later. The roommate says bye to Terkessa. She drops the 5-year-old off to her cousin. I'm assuming North Little Rock Police is going to be interviewing the cousin.
Absolutely. Everybody that you mentioned there that had contact with her prior to her actually disappearing, they're going to be talking to those people and trying to, just the relevant information to establish that solid timeline of where she was, who she was with, and who she may have been talking to at that time. And again, if anybody she was having problems with, she's, a mother of a 5-year-old, they just don't drop off the face of the earth like this. So you've got to, I'm sure there is the same as we would do, is they're investigating this as a homicide, until proven otherwise. And they're following up on all that information, try to find out if she did have any kind of digital, footprints, which all of us are going to have now, either phones or whatever. Follow up on all that information. I'm sure they've done that. But there's, you get that information when you're investigating a case, and you may have an idea of what's going on, at the time of the disappearance, but you just need that little bit more information from the actual public out there that you could tie in with that information that you get during the course of the investigation. And sometimes it takes that small amount, that one phone call, that can tie something else up that links up to, you may end up finding, what happened to her and actually arrest somebody for that was responsible for her disappearance.
You're watching Monday Night Mystery here on KARK.com, Fox16.com, across all of our digital platforms. And I want to go ahead and bring up that hashtag one more time. You can join in on our conversation using the hashtag Monday Night Mystery here on Facebook, and we will get your question answered. And I want to bring in a question now, and this is actually coming from the Missing Persons of Arkansas Facebook page, using that hashtag Monday Night Mystery, speaking in general about all of the data analysis collected in both cases. Did that data not result in any tips or leads to progress the case further? They're talking about cell phone records, camera video surveillance, sightings, etc. And of course, we don't have anybody from the North Little Rock Police Department on with us tonight. But Tommy, I'm assuming that and the detectives that up there at the Cold Case Squad, this is basic Detective 101 work.
Mitch, it is. And, in response to that question, I would answer that question is, when you're conducting a potential homicide investigation, it's a one-way street. They're going to take all the information that comes in, and they're going to be selective of what information they put out, because what it comes down to is somebody has been killed as a result of their disappearance. They don't want that information out there because only the person involved in the murder and the victims know what happened. We call that holdback. And, what North Little Rock's doing on how they're releasing that information is the proper way to do this investigation. So they're doing this investigation right. And it irritates, I know, the public sometimes, because some of that information is not released because they just want to know. And detectives understand that. But what it comes down to, they have to be disciplined about releasing that information. And they should keep doing it the way they're doing right now. I think I give kudos to them on how they're doing this. And they just keep plugging along, and maybe we'll get some results.
Let's hope we do, because there are so many families that are hurt by this, and they're trying to bring either their loved one home or get justice. I want to get to Sonia right now. Have their phone records been analyzed? And Latricia, I want to turn to you, because this was actually a question that came up earlier in the week. We simply don't know what information the detectives have, or if they were able to bring their phones, but detectives have a way of getting that data anyways.
They definitely have a way of getting that data, but we were also told, Mitch, that Wallace and Burnett had been texting each other up until the time that they both went missing. So it appears that they've already been diving into their phone records to see exactly what's going on and if these two cases are connected. We hear about these cases and we think, yeah, they have to be connected because they were friends and they both went missing at the same time. So we feel like these cases are connected. We're not talking to the detectives right now for the reasons that Tommy stated, that they're plugging away at this case and they just can't put all of that information into the public arena. However, one would think that because they knew each other and they went missing about the same time that they're connected, but that doesn't mean that it is. However, what we do know is that Miss Wallace is missing, and Miss Burnett, we don't know what happened to her other than her leg was found in the Arkansas River. We don't know what happened to her either. So these two cases are a mystery at this point and very intriguing. And like you said, these women mattered to people. They had families. Both of them had several children. And these children, I know, are missing their mothers. They haven't had their mothers in over 7 years, and they don't know what happened to them. And that's just hard to deal with for anyone, let alone young children.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is. It's hard, and it's hard to process it. I want to get to Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor. Kelly, just because detectives have phone records, that doesn't necessarily mean anything for a courtroom if it reaches a courtroom.
Not necessarily. It just depends on what the information the records can give you. If it's good information, if it's information that leads to a suspect and you're able to pin down, let's say through cell phone records, you're able to determine that the victim was talking to the suspect the day that they were killed, for example, you can take those records, and there are ways to get them into evidence. You have to jump through some hoops. It's not super difficult. You have to get the carrier to cooperate. Usually you'll have to bring someone in from Verizon or AT&T or whoever the carrier is to authenticate the records, and they can fall under what we call a business records exception to the hearsay rule, and you're able to get those phone records in, whether it's like call logs or text message logs or even the cell tower location data. There's ways to get that in as well. It's a little bit, that can get in a little bit more difficult because sometimes you get a challenge to the science behind the location data. But it's not anything that's really that new, so it's pretty easy to overcome that challenge as well for prosecutors. But there are ways to use them in court. I've used them a lot. I found that they can be very helpful because they are actual documentary evidence. And the great thing about that type of evidence is it doesn't change. You know, you can have witnesses whose memories might fade. The details can get confused, but things like cell phone records, that stuff is set and it doesn't change. So prosecutors love to have that type of evidence. It's not going to tell you the whole story, but it might be that one little piece that you need to connect all the dots. So looking into these records, as Latricia said, we talked last week about the officers knowing that the two were texting each other, that they were communicating around that time. So who else were they talking to? That's something that I'm sure the investigators know, but they're holding back at this point because they have that information, but that's all part of their investigation.
Because Tommy, you have to have, you have to be able to take a case and prosecute it without any kind of reasonable doubt.
That's correct. I mean, and what people sometimes forget, it's on the state's burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And you only get one time up to bat when you get ready to charge somebody. So if you're ready, if you prematurely charge somebody in a case like this with, evidence that's not that great, and you get a not guilty verdict, then you're done. It's over. So, and I know in the past, like I said, I know these detectives over there, they do a really good job, and they're very good about dotting their I's and crossing their T's. The one thing that I would put more back on the community needs to help on, is she's going to have friends out there that know what was going on in their lives, who they were involved with, who they were talking to, where they were going in North Little Rock, or wherever they were going. She's going to have contacts and friends out there that they're going to know somebody that they may not think this information is significant at the time, but it could be significant to the detectives that are working the case. So if you have that information, I highly encourage those people to contact the North Little Rock homicide detectives and say, hey, this may not be nothing, but this is who I know that they would be associated with, or they were associated with at that time. North Little Rock detectives aren't going to be looking for people that are doing their own investigation on the side. They want firsthand knowledge from people that were involved in these ladies' lives at the time of their disappearance, and pass that information on to those detectives.
Yeah, you're right. First-hand knowledge. And somebody's bringing up a good question, Sharon on Facebook, wondering if their vehicles were ever located. Kelly Ward, you've been diving through these court documents. What are you learning about their vehicles?
So there was Miss Wallace had a white Toyota, and it's never been found. So that was one thing I saw in a flyer that was released, a missing flyer from North Little Rock, that it was her, you know, and her car. If you'd seen her car, to let them know. So she had been driving the car that day. We know she dropped off her son. We know she'd been to her apartment. Her roommate saw her, and she left in that white Toyota, and it hasn't been seen since either.
You know, I find that so bizarre. I mean, we're talking about a woman who's been missing for 7 years. Her friend is also missing, right? I mean, her friend's leg was found in the Arkansas River. The circumstances around this, any law enforcement officer with a brain would say that there's something suspicious here. You know, it really shocks me, a car still missing 7 years later. Tommy, is that unusual?
Actually, it's not. I've got a case that I'm working on right now where a lady's missing and her car is missing. And there's all kinds of ways that people can destroy cars. I won't get into that on the broadcast because you never know if somebody bad's watching the broadcast right now. But, you know, there are ways to get rid of vehicles. And so that doesn't really shock me that much.
You know, for folks just joining us, we're talking about Terkessa Wallace, and she has been missing for 7 years. Her friend is also missing. Her friend's leg was found in the Arkansas River. Latricia Woodruff, I want to get to you. She's a law enforcement and a communications expert. What should the public do tonight? I mean, Terkessa has a 5-year-old son.
And from what I understand, she had, I believe, 3 other children at the time that she went missing. So, and again, loved ones, people who cared about her. And she deserved to still be here with her family. So for anyone who has any information about this that they've possibly been holding for all of these years, again, like Tommy said, come forward with that information. Call the North Little Rock Police Department. They're working very hard on this case. And even though, again, like he said, you may not hear about all of the leads that they have, that doesn't mean that they're not working on the case. They're still working on the case, but it's apparent, because no one has been arrested, that they haven't found that final piece of the puzzle to figure out what happened to her and to hold someone responsible for her going missing, if someone is responsible for it, or to just find out what happened to her. Again, she went missing on January 10th, 2014, 7 years ago, from North Little Rock. A childhood friend also went missing a day or so before that. So we're talking about this, shedding a light on both of these, on Burnett and Wallace. Both went missing about the same time. They were childhood friends, and the possibility of these being related. But if you have any information on either one of these, please call the North Little Rock Police Department. Help these families bring these cases to some sort of resolution. It may not be closure, but some sort of resolution for these families.
Really appreciate it. Latricia Woodruff, law enforcement communications expert. Tommy Hudson, former, well, retired, we'll give you that due, Tommy, retired homicide detective. And we have Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight here on Monday Night Mystery. If you missed any part of our show, you can watch it in its full length on KARK.com, Fox16.com, and of course on all of our digital platforms. If you know anything about the whereabouts of Terkessa Wallace, you are asked to call the North Little Rock Police Department. For now, I'm Mitch McCoy. I hope you have a good rest of your night.